Hello again, gamers. Welcome back for another episode of Grokking Twilight Imperium. I'm the board game captain, and today I'm going to be showing you how to grok the Emirates of Hakan. So before I get started, I do want to say that if you're in a position to would like to help out the channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description down below. Also, if you'd like to get yourself some cool gamer gear like this "Hey good looking, come to this dungeon often" shirt that I'm wearing today, there is a link to my Teespring store in the description below, and there's also a link to my website, boardgamecaptain.com, down in the description below this video. So let's jump right into this. We're going to be talking about the Emirates of Hakan. These guys are usually front and center on every edition of Twilight Imperium on the cover of the box. They were one of the first things that drew my attention. Originally, they really drew me in because of how much they reminded me of the Kazin or Kazinti from the known space universe, like the Ringworld books, etc., from Larry Niven. Again, they're big alien cat people. But interestingly, I was surprised when I first checked out Twilight Imperium and I found out that they were not combat-oriented. Usually when people make lion people, the first thing they think of is going full-on combat, whereas these guys are the merchants and traders of the Twilight Imperium universe. And that was a very different take on big cat people. Decided to make them, they made them very much Middle Eastern in flavor, and also very much mechanically towards trading, not warfare, which was an interesting decision in the design. So we're going to talk about what you get when you play the Emirates of Hakan in 4th edition Twilight Imperium, along with all of the components you get from the Prophecy of Kings expansion, and how I would recommend you play the Emirates of Hakan. So, to start with, let's talk about what you get for the Emirates of Hakan at the beginning of the game. So you get their starting system, which has 3 planets, which are Aretsi, Herkant, and Comdorn. Now, these planets each individually are very subpar, but together make an okay mix of resources and influence. You get 2 influence, that's kind of subpar. 3 resources, though, that's not bad. So it is a 3-planet system, but it actually totally adds up to just okay. You're going to want to get out and colonize some better systems quickly, and that brings me to the next part of what you start with, which is your starting fleet, because the Emirates of Hakan are a top tier colonizer if you want them to be. You see, they start with 2 carriers, 4 ground troops, 2 fighters, a space dock, and a cruiser. Now, the 2 carriers and the 4 ground troops is what I want to focus on, because specifically, having 2 carriers and 4 ground troops means you can colonize 2 planet systems every round without even the use of warfare or something else to pick up a token and do another move in colonization. This means that they can definitely be a top tier colonizer. With warfare, you could do 3 2-planet systems, which is huge. You could really grab a lot of systems very quickly with this starting combination of ships. Though you don't have a lot of military power, the 1 cruiser and a few fighters aren't going to be very good at defending you if you get into combat, but that's not really what these guys are about, and you will get some money to buy some bigger, badder ships later. I'm going to talk about that momentarily. So I want to discuss their starting abilities. So the Emirates of Hakan have 3 abilities: Masters of Trade, Guild Ships, and Arbiters. So, Masters of Trade. You do not have to spend a commodity token to resolve the secondary ability of the trade strategy card. This means that every round you're going to have your commodities replenished. So you better be doing a lot of trade using up those commodities, because you're going to be getting them back. The second ability, Guild Ships, says you can negotiate transactions with players who are not your neighbor. Now, normally, in 4th edition, you have to share a border with someone to be able to trade with them, but because of Guild Ships, you don't, which means on turn 1 of round 1, you are the only faction in the game that can immediately trade with everybody. So I think you can see where this is going. You're going to be wanting to get that trade. Spoiler alert about when I'm getting to the strategy cards later, but trade is going to be a big priority for you because you're going to want to do a lot of trade quickly to get lots of money quickly to buy lots of fleets and lots of things. Trade is going to be a big part of the strategy for the Emirates of Hakan. The third ability, Arbiters, is when you are negotiating a transaction, action cards can be exchanged as part of that transaction. Now, the wording of this is important. Action cards can be exchanged. Not you can sell action cards. They can be exchanged, meaning you can buy action cards from other people or you can sell action cards. So this is a pretty cool ability. Even if you haven't been taking the particular strategy cards that let you get action cards, you have other ways of buying them. And if you have been taking them, you can sell them for trade goods or, maybe trade them for other action cards. All of this is very cool, and it definitely leans right into their theme of being masters of trade. Now, the next thing I want to talk about in discussing the Emirates of Hakan is I want to discuss their flagship. So the flagship of the Emirates of Hakan is the Wrath of Kanara. Now, it is 8 cost. It gets 2 attacks, which hit on 7s or better. So that's only power-wise on par with 2 cruisers. So that doesn't seem all that great. It's got 1 movement. It's got 3 capacity. But then it's got a really interesting ability. So its ability is that after, this is the big part of this, after rolling a die during space combat, in this system, you may spend 1 trade good to apply a +1 to the result. So this is a force multiplier. Here's the thing: you have to pay very close attention to the wording of this ability. So first off, it's after you roll the die. That is really important because you roll the dice to see what hits and what misses, and close misses are the ones you're going to be able to spend trade goods on to improve. It says after you roll a die during a space combat in this system. So now that specifically says during a space combat in this system, not a die from the Wrath of Kanara, but any ship in that system. So you got it in there, you've got a cruiser, you've got a dreadnought, you can use it on one of their attacks as well. Then you may spend 1 trade good to apply a +1 to the result. Now, this is also important because it does not say once per combat, which means that you can spend multiple trade goods if you've got them. So you're going to want to have a nice stockpile of trade goods because trade goods are going to help you improve the combat capability of the fleet that contains the Wrath of Kanara. More trade goods means you can spend more money on making this fleet do incredible damage. Something else important to note is it is specifically trade goods, not resources. So you cannot do this by exhausting planets. You have to build up trade goods to be able to do this ability. This flagship, while being a bit underpowered to start with, that ability makes its fleet incredibly powerful, especially since you are a faction that is going to stockpile trade goods. That's going to be a big part of your strategy. So this is going to be huge. You're going to want to get the Wrath of Kanara out as quickly as possible because this is going to be the one thing that's going to turn your mediocre combat fleets into at least one of them into an amazing combat fleet. So the next thing I want to talk about is the 3 different characters you have and the mech. So you've got the agent, commander, and hero, and the mech. I want to discuss their abilities. So of course, to start with, at the beginning of the game, everyone always has access to their agent ability. Now, the agent ability of the Emirates of Hakan is a very interesting one that again leads into their ability to trade right off the bat and works with their also very interesting and very amazing commodity stat of 6. So something I did not mention is that when you get the trade ability and you get to fill your commodities, you have a max of 6 commodities, which is huge. Most factions have like 3. So that's a really, really awesome thing. Now, granted, they don't directly affect you, but being able to trade with everyone, you can do multiple trades to different people to get their commodities to turn them into trade goods and spread yours around and give some to them, give some to them. Keep everybody on your good side. Hey, don't attack me. Remember, I trade with you every turn, kind of thing. Because you don't want to really do a lot of fighting with the Emirates of Hakan. That's not really what they're about. You want to have a powerful fleet with your flagship as a deterrent to keep other people from attacking you. But more, you want to play everybody off against each other, and only fight when you really need to and when you know you can win. So their ability for their agent, who their agent is Karth of the Golden Sands, his ability is during the action phase, you may exhaust this card to gain 2 commodities or replenish another player's commodities. So this is very interesting because if you're doing multiple trades with lots of players, and let's say you get the trade strategy card. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but this is definitely obviously one you're going to go for. And there's that ability there that you can choose any number of other players to replenish their commodities without having to pay the command token for the secondary ability. You can talk to people like, hey, I'm going to want to trade commodities with you. Are you down with that? Because if you are, I'll let you replenish yours for free. Yes, good. I've got lots of commodities. I'm going to want to trade commodities with you as well. Are you down with that as well? You can do this with like 3 different people. Then you can trade, 3 commodities to someone for their 3 commodities, 3 commodities to someone for their 3 commodities. You're out of commodities. You get to exhaust this guy. It doesn't even cost an action. It just, you exhaust him to gain 2 commodities during the action phase. You exhaust him, gain 2 back, and trade 2 commodities to a third person for their 2 commodities. Also, later in the game, when people are starting to get a bit more iffy about wanting to help you out, when they start realizing maybe you're winning or maybe you're in second place and they're winning, instead, if you're just really teaming up with someone else who's not winning to take down the person in first place, you can do something like, okay, I'm going to trade with you twice. I'm going to trade with you. I'm going to trade a bunch of my commodities for your commodities. Then I'm going to replenish all of your commodities and trade with you again. Because, again, it has the ability to replenish another player's commodities. Then both of you will get double use out of trading commodities to turn into trade goods for that round, which is really, really freaking awesome. So now, the next character I want to talk about here is the commander. The commander gets unlocked if you have 10 trade goods. Now, if you can tell from what I've been talking about, this is going to happen very easily. You're going to have 10 trade goods, and you're going to have 10 trade goods pretty quickly. So you're going to get the commander ability fairly early game. Now, their ability is that when you cast votes, you may spend any number of trade goods to cast 2 additional votes for each trade good spent. Now, this is really cool because you, again, are going to be stockpiling trade goods. Now, you have an extra use for them. You can use them when you get in combat with your flagship's fleet, but you can also use them when voting on things. So suddenly, you can turn your mercantile power into control over the political realm. This adds a whole new facet to playing the Hakan, where suddenly you can become a major political power because of your control over the galactic economy. This is a very useful character. I highly recommend getting him as soon as possible. You should definitely try to stockpile a bunch of trade goods so you can get him very early game, which is very easily done with the Emirates of Hakan. I think probably by round 2 you can get this commander released. Now, their final character, the hero, of course, like all heroes, is released when you have scored 3 objectives. They are the Harug Gefara, the Galactic Securities Net, and when 1 or more of your units use production, you may reduce the cost of each of your units to 0 for this use of production. If you do so, purge this card. Now, this can be a very cool and very powerful one-off ability. Of course, all of the hero abilities are 1 use, and then you purge the card from the game. But basically, you can get 1 fully free production. This can be huge in the late game, where you can throw out a gigantic fleet right next to Mechatol Rex, and then just, through a little trickery like using Warfare to remove the token, roll in and take it. Now, things you're going to want to do before you do this. 1, you're going to want to have a planet close to, say, Mechatol Rex, or some other very important front line connected to an enemy of yours. You're going to want to have a planet with a really high resource stat that you build a space dock on. Because the thing is, you're getting the whole fleet for free. The only thing restricting you is going to be your production. And remember that planetary productions are equal to their resource plus 2. So your starting system has a terrible production planets. The best planet in there, the one you're going to build the space dock on, will have a total of 4 production. You're going to want somebody with a lot more production that you can throw a lot of stuff out. In addition, you're going to want to have researched the War Sun tech by that point, so you can throw out maybe both your War Suns in this one production, along with, maybe your flagship if it got destroyed, and maybe some dreadnoughts. If you have a nice fleet supply and you make a really big fleet, you're going to want to throw out as many big ships as you can. And then, once you hit that fleet supply, maybe some smaller stuff like some ground troops and some fighters and stuff that don't count towards your fleet supply in that system. But yeah, this is a fantastic, absolutely fantastic ability. Now, the last of the things is a little more anticlimactic. The mech. The mech, it's a standard mech, cost 2, combat 6, sustain damage, just like all mechs. But it has an ability. Its ability is very situational, though. It's interesting, but it is situational. So its ability is that the planet that this mech is on can be traded as part of a transaction. If you do, you move all of your units from that planet to another planet. So this can be really interesting if you steal a planet from someone else and then you basically ransom it back to them. That can be very fun. Also, later when you're desperate for resources, you can just trade off some of your planets to someone for a whole bunch of trade goods. Also can be really good, or maybe some really good cards, etc. It can be situationally good, but overall, compared to the other abilities, I do feel like the mech ability is a little underwhelming compared to the agent, commander, and hero abilities that the Emirates of Hakan get. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about the Emirates of Hakan are the technology. So to start with, Emirates of Hakan start with 2 quite decent techs. I love it when a faction starts with more than 1 tech, and these start with 2, and they are really good ones to start with. They start with the Sarween Tools, which of course is a fantastic tech that I recommend for everybody. If you don't start with it, you should probably get it at some point. When 1 or more of your units use production, reduce the combined cost of the production by 1. So this basically lets you, for free, get 1 resource towards production every time you do a production somewhere. So do a production on your space dock. For free, you can get a couple fighters. For free, you can get a destroyer. Or you can get one resource towards buying something more expensive like your flagship or dreadnought, which is great. The other starting tech they have is anti-mass deflectors. Your ships can move into and through asteroid fields. Also, space cannons apply a -1 when trying to shoot at your fleets. So these are both really good starting techs. Very decent. They also help you get lots of other techs. There's not a huge amount of techs that I would specifically recommend for the Emirates of Hakan that work specifically amazing for them versus other factions. If a tech is generally good, it will be good for the Emirates of Hakan as well. But there are a couple I specifically recommend, a couple of green techs, even though you start with 1 yellow and 1 blue. There's a couple of green techs I do recommend because they will help you get one of your faction specific techs, which requires you to have 2 green techs, and you don't actually start with any green. They're faction specific techs. 1 requires you to have 2 green, 1 requires you to have 3 yellow, which means to get both of them, you would have to get 2 green and 2 other yellow, because you only start with 1 yellow, to be able to get them. So these are not techs you're going to get early game. These are going to be a bit later on. So the green techs I would recommend you get, though, to get the faction-specific green tech, and that's because of the 2 techs, the green one is the one I recommend more. I would recommend you start by getting Psychoarchaeology. Now, Psychoarchaeology says you can use the technology specialties on planets you control without exhausting them, even if those planets are exhausted, and during the action phase, you can exhaust planets you control that have the technology specialty to gain 1 trade good. This is good because if you're not going to use them for anything else, paying to get the trade good, you want to be stockpiling trade goods to unlock your commander, to have lots of trade goods on hand to spend for those abilities for the political agendas, as well as to up the combat ability of the fleet that has your flagship in. You want lots of trade goods, so this is going to help you stockpile them. The other tech works with that in concert. also in concert with those abilities to spend trade goods on those things, it's Biostims. Now, Biostims requires you to already have one green, but if you already got Psychoarchaeology, you have that green. So Biostims says you may exhaust this card at the end of your turn to ready one of your planets that has a technology specialty or one of your other technologies. So, here's the thing. Exhaust the planet, get a trade good. Refresh it. Exhaust it again, get another trade good. You can do it twice. Basically, it's not a huge boost, but it is something that is really awesome. And it does work well with their abilities. Again, most of the other basic techs, if they work well for other factions, they're going to work well for the Emirates of Hakan. But there's not a whole lot else that work really well specifically in concert with their starting abilities or with their character abilities to help you in a unique way, except for Biostims and Psychoarchaeology. Now, the reason I recommend getting Biostims and Psychoarchaeology is to get their faction-specific tech, which is Production Biomes. It has a prerequisite of 2 greens, so now you have it with the Biostims and the Psychoarchaeology, and it is an action. Exhaust this card, spend 1 token from your strategy pool, gain 4 trade goods, and choose 1 other player, and they gain 2 trade goods. Again, another great way to stockpile trade goods, which again helps you out with your combat in your flagship fleet and in your ability with agendas. So yeah, this is going to be very useful. So the other faction-specific tech is Quantum Data Hub Node. So it has 3 yellow prerequisites, and at the end of the strategy phase, you may spend 1 token from your strategy pool and give another player 3 trade goods. If you do, give 1 strategy card, one of your strategy cards to that player to take 1 of his strategy cards. So this can be situationally amazing if the other player has taken a strategy card that you really want, like in a turn where you really need warfare. This can be really good in that turn. But like I say, it's situationally useful. There's going to be turns where you don't use this. There's going to be turns where you're going to be, if you get this, you're going to be really happy you got it, and you're really going to use it. But because of how it's situational, I do feel it's more underwhelming than the production biomes that you're going to use constantly. On the other hand, it is a failsafe. So you may want to work towards it. You may want to get any other 2 yellow text so you can get this, so that when you really, really need that Imperial to get the extra points you need, you can get Imperial. Even if someone else takes it, you can be like, no, I'm paying you 3 trade goods and you're giving me Imperial. Or if you really need warfare, or if you really need trade, or if you really need technology, whatever it might be, you can force the player who took it to give it to you. So yeah, situationally, this can be pretty awesome. And actually, now that I'm thinking about while I'm filming it, in certain scenarios, this could actually be game-winning. It's just that it's situational. It's sometimes awesome, sometimes not going to get used. But there you have it. That is Quantum Data Hub Node. Now, the next thing I want to talk about with the Emirates of Hakan is what strategy cards I recommend. So first off, trade. Trade is huge to start with. You're going to want on your first round, you're going to want to try to grab trade. Trade lets you get 3 trade goods. Okay, that's great. Remember, you can spend them on awesome stuff. You can replenish your commodities. Okay, that's great. You have 6 commodities. And then you can choose any number of other players to replenish their commodities for free without spending a token from your strategy pool. So again, combined with the Karth of the Golden Sands, which allows you to replenish 2 of your commodities later, you're going to want to try to do deals with everybody else on the table. 3 other players if you can. So you can do lots of trades and get tons of trade goods. If you do so on the first round, you're going to be able to build a sizable fleet very quickly, because you could wind up with, 8 trade goods off the trades plus 3 more, so 11 total, just from taking trade. You're going to wind up with a huge amount of money and be able to, if you want to, build a big fleet with that right off the bat. And if you do all that, before you build that big fleet, you're going to unlock your commander, because you will have gotten more than the 10 trade goods that you needed to unlock him. So that is really cool. You could get that all done possibly on the first turn, which is pretty amazing. Now, if you can't get trade, you still have your abilities. You will get the secondary ability of trade and fill up your commodities for free. And then you'll be able to do your trades and at least get probably 8 commodities, which is 8 commodities will turn into hopefully 8 trade goods if you do the trades right. And that's still pretty good. So if you don't get trade, or if you're playing a 3-player game, you can get 2 of the strategy cards. What other strategy cards are good to go for? So next, after trade, I would say Warfare. Warfare is a fantastic backup to trade for the Emirates of Hakan, again, because they can be a top-tier colonizer. So with Warfare, on the first round, you could colonize 3 2-planet systems. Fantastic second place for trade in the beginning of the game. Later on, you're going to occasionally want technology, so you can get the certain techs you want to get the prerequisites for more powerful techs. You're going to want Imperial when you want to get points. Once you get a planet with a high resource value, you're going to want construction, so you can get a space dock on it, because that's going to be really good once you get your hero ability unlocked. And once you unlock your commander and unlock the political phase, you're going to want to occasionally do politics, because that's going to be really powerful for you for being able to have all the extra political power by spending trade goods for votes. In addition, diplomacy is going to be huge in the late game for the Emirates of Hakan. You're going to want to pick and choose what combats you do, because you're not going to be super militarily powerful. You're going to want to avoid combats, but at some point you're not going to be able to. But diplomacy can at least help you avoid combats with, some of the time. Because diplomacy says you choose one system other than Mechatol Rex that contains a planet you control. Each other player places a command token from their reinforcements in that system, then ready up to 2 exhausted planets you control. So one, you get 2 planets back that you've already spent. That's great. But also specifically, you can pick a system other than Mechatol Rex and be like, you guys can't attack me here. So when there is a place where you know someone's about to attack you, other than Mechatol Rex, this is going to be a very powerful one to keep them off you for a turn, to keep those other players from attacking you in that key system for at least a turn. Okay, so now I want to talk about what hidden objectives I recommend going for to be able to get your 3 objectives to unlock your hero ability. Okay, so I've got 3 particular secret objectives I would recommend you going towards with the Emirates of Hakan. If you could find them, these are ones that would really work with the strategy of the Emirates of Hakan for being able to get these particular objectives. So the first one is Drive the Debate. It's one you get for the agenda phase, and it is you or a planet you control are elected by an agenda. So again, you are going to be able to buy votes. So this is one you can definitely work towards once the agenda phase pops up. This is going to be one that you can definitely achieve. Next, we have there are 3 or more laws in play. Again, you're going to be doing a lot of politics, and you're going to be doing both, politically trying to play the other characters off each other and actually doing politics and trying to get laws put into play that benefit you, hopefully. So this is another one that's really going to help you out. And then finally, have another player's promissory note in your play area. Again, you're going to be trying to do deals with people, mutually beneficial deals, keep them from attacking you. You do get an interesting note that you get to be able to trade with people. You get a faction-specific note that you can trade called Trade Convoys, which allows another player to basically get the ability you have for being able to trade with people when they're not adjacent to you. Now, this is something that you may not want to give away too early in the game, because if you do, you're giving away your edge you have over everybody else to that player. But things like this can really entice people to give you their promissory note and be able to possibly have people who are disincentivized from attacking you, which is something you want with the Emirates of Hakan, because they're not really a combat faction. You can make them combat heavy by getting lots of unit upgrades, but they don't have abilities that really lean them towards being good at combat. So there you have it. This is everything I recommend when playing the Emirates of Hakan. I don't feel that they are one of the most amazing, overpowered factions, but they are definitely a fun faction to play. And number one, most important thing, it's not all about, kill, kill, kill. It's about having fun. And these guys can be very interesting and very fun, and you can definitely win with them if you play the game right, which a big part of playing the game right with them is trading using politics, negotiating with other players, disincentivizing them from attacking you. You want to build up big fleets so they don't want to attack you, but you don't actually want to attack until it's really advantageous and you know you can win. You want to do a lot of trade, get tons of money, be able to use your money in your big flagship fleet to spend to increase its capabilities when you do have to fight. Also, you can use your money to buy yourself agendas and elections and be able to win out in the agenda phase. So there you go. That is how I recommend playing the Emirates of Hakan. So let me know if I missed anything or if you have any comments on playing the Emirates of Hakan in Twilight Imperium 4th Edition. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this episode of Grokking Twilight Imperium and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Kaptain. That's Kaptain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.